open or not is unimportant. So that's it. That's it on the announcements. I thought I'd read I'm just going to read a little bit out of this thing, and then I noticed that Joe Dan has a book of Bukowski poems in his bag there. And since Jory Sherman was a good buddy of Bukowski back in the early Beat days, I thought I'd read a couple of Jory's poems since I have his book here. For those unfamiliar with Jory started writing poetry in the 50s in San Francisco when the so-called Beat generation started that Bukowski was part of, and some of the other Beat poets were associated with. They kind of started.
Is Bukowski still living?
I don't know. I don't have an iPhone, otherwise I could look it up. But don't think so. Anyway, that's how Jory started writing, was poetry, and then he started writing Western fiction and wrote hundreds and hundreds of books. He had hundreds of books published, probably close to 400 books, maybe more, were published over the years, mostly Western fiction. He also wrote plays. He did screenplays. He did Hollywood work. He did television work. Kind of an all-around guy. And then in his 80s, when he lived here in Pittsburgh, down at the lake, he started visiting Winnsboro a lot and hooked up with Graham Hopkins, who taught him how to paint. And since Jory was legally blind and couldn't see more than 6 inches clearly and had no peripheral vision, it was very difficult for him to paint. He never could see his finished work. So Graham always claimed they were his work, but just Jory's hand painted them. And both of them have passed now, so they can argue that in the great beyond. This is one of Jory's paintings over here that he's building. One of my favorite paintings of Jory. I'm happy to be the owner of. And then I have the painting that this cover is based on. I own that too. This is a book of poetry that Jory had published, which includes work from his early days up until when the book was published, which was published in 2011. And it's all of Jory's books I have in the building are signed by Jory. They're all for sale here. And so he was a good friend. He visited a lot. Took a writing class with him at the Center for the Arts, and I really miss him. He was a really, really nice gentleman, and he for years he said he painted with words, and then when he got to Winnsboro, he painted with a brush. Very interesting. Anyway, I'm going to read a couple of his short poems here. I don't know, there's no list on when these were written. Some of them, like I say, some of these were written in the 50s, and some of them were written more recently. This is called Dog, D-O-G, like the pet. And almost had a visitor there. Not quite. Not quite. Little dark dog lying in the lane, easing into the pattern of night, his muzzle bubbling red. His boy master, a shadow with a flashlight, crying for a miracle, damns the sightless truck. His man master, a wisdom with a hammer, feeling some of the supper, takes the form of God. 4 dark paws moving from the lane, soft howling in the embers of night, tail wagging warns the moon. This is called Storm Warning, and it was part of a book of poetry published in 1965 in Chicago. The name of the book was My Face in Wax, was the name of the book, and this is called Storm Warning. A faint storm ripples, distant rumble black, crackle black, fierce, with balled hammer fists. I feel it in my blistered hands, see it crack light in a splash of mercury through my window. The air, unwilling to hurry, sobs great draughts, racking big bundles blown easy gray from some sea valley farther off, speeds in darting directions under the fright-hidden moon. I feel a silence in the streets. When I looked up from hearing December far, the tumble-down crumble of decrescendo drums, I noticed my door wasn't locked. The door near the storm, tightly fastened now. And suddenly, I'm very sleepy, drowsy, like fat corn hopping as it ripples its green clothes, wading out the dryness. This is the last one of Jory's I'm going to read. It's called Two Novels and a Candle on a Chair. And it's in parentheses, it's from a letter to Theo. Theo was Vincent van Gogh's brother. And this is about Vincent. Vincent, some said your mind flew over the cornfields in a dark flutter of wings, cold crushed, and that your mind spiraled like cypress, grouping the moon in an agony surge of chaotic light, while light bled circle screams at your dynamic stroke touch, and churches withered, tight in a black-blue bruise as your window had shuddered in the darkened anguish of St. Remy. But, Vincent, in those days, crows flew over you when your easel was fixed in the mistral earth and tongues tore past you in a staccato of lies. You are as much a poet as hand, and where you walked, nature shrunk in bright pools of color. No, Vincent, you never lost the only sanity in existence, but you weep as I for the shallow souls who jerk the trigger of your pain, and you weep no more. Your love reaches beyond mortal mind, and I crash soft with you on the threshold of eternity.
Okay.
That's some of Jory's work. And to conclude, I will read a poem when we hear it, I've only heard it as a song, as a cowboy song, but it's here under this book of best loved poems. I've read from this before. It's a family book of best loved poems. It was edited by David George, published by Doubleday, and it was published back in 1952 is when it was published. And there's a great many poems in it from a lot of very famous poems. This particular poet was Joe Anonymous. You remember Joe? Anonymous was his name. I've often wanted to change my name to Anonymous so that I could get paid for all these poems that are published, but no one's let me do that. This is the old Chisholm Trail, which you have probably heard a million times on old westerns and stuff. But I'm going to read it the way it was intended, as a poem. Come along, boys, and listen to my tale. I'll tell you of my troubles on the old Chisholm Trail. I started up the trail October 23rd. I started up the trail with the 2U herd. Oh, a $10 horse and a $40 saddle and I'm going to punching Texas cattle. I woke up one morning on the old Chisholm Trail, rope in my hand and a cow by the tail. I'm up in the morning afore daylight, and afore I sleep the moon shines bright. Old Ben Bolt was a blamed good boss, but he'll go see the girls on a saw-backed horse. Old Ben Bolt was a fine old man, and you'd know there was whiskey wherever he'd land. My boss throwed me off at the creek called Mud. My horse throwed me off round the 2U herd. Last time I saw him, he was going across the level, a-kicking up his heels and a-running like the devil. It's cloudy in the west, a-looking like rain, and my damned old slicker's in the wagon again. Crippled my horse, I don't know how, roping at the horns of a 2U cow. We hit Caldwell, and we hit her on the fly. We bedded down the cattle on the hill close by. No chaps, no slicker, and it's pouring down rain, and I swear by God I'll never night herd again. Feet in the stirrups and seat in the saddle, I hung and wrestled with them longhorn cattle. Last night I was on guard, and the leader broke the ranks. I hit my horse down the shoulders, and I spurred him in the flanks. The wind commenced to blow, and the rain began to fall. Hit looked by grab like we was going to lose 'em all. I jumped in the saddle and grabbed Hope the horn. Best blamed cowpuncher ever was born. I popped my foot in the stirrup and gave a little yell. The tail cattle broke loose, and the leaders went to hell. I don't give a damn if they never do stop. I'll ride as long as an 8-day clock. Foot in the stirrup and hand on the horn, best damn cowboy ever was born. I heard it and I hollered, and I done very well, till the boss said, boys, just let 'em go to hell. Stray in the herd, and the boss said, kill it, and I shot him in the rump with the handle of the skillet. We rounded him up and put him on the cars, and that was the last of the old 2 bars. Oh, it's bacon and beans most every day. I'd as soon be a-eatin' prairie hay. I'm on the best horse, and I'm going at a run. I'm the quickest shooting cowboy that ever pulled a gun. I went to the wagon to get my roll, to come back to Texas. Dad burned my soul. I went to the boss to draw my roll. He had figured it out. I was $9 in the hole. I'll sell my outfit just as soon as I can. I won't punch cattle for no damn man. Going back to town to draw my money, going back home to see my honey. With my knees in the saddle and my seat in the sky, I'll quit punching cows by the sweet by and by. The Old Chisholm Trail by Anonymous. This also has in it My Darling Clementine, which was written by Percy Montrose. The Dying Cowboy was anonymous. Red River Valley was anonymous.
Does Clementine have 4 or 5 verses?
It has
In other words,
2 verses and a refrain.
just 2?
Yeah.
Okay. He doesn't have the one about the cemetery.
No, it's got the...
I think that's a late edition.
Yeah, it's got In the Cabin in the Canyon, this first one.
Yeah.
And then it has Light She Was Like a Fairy, Her and Her Shoes Were number 9.
Yeah.
So those are the 2 it has, plus the refrain. John Henry was anonymous also. Boy, someone got to make a lot of money. They could have claimed credit for that.
Well, not anymore, because the copyright's probably...
Yeah, well, yeah, it's we're a little past the statute of limitations. Anyway, my contribution for this month. And,
Yes.
When I first came to Texas,
I can't hold this up and applaud.
when I first came to Texas, for my birthday, one of my birthdays, Lynn Adler, who was half of Adler and Hearn here in Winnsboro, who I had met in 1994, when I was still an atheist, got me a framed, it was a a movie that Ronald Reagan starred in many, many years ago called The Cowboy from Brooklyn. And Lynn found a copy of that and had it framed and inscribed for me by her, not Ronald Reagan, and which I still have to this day. And so that was my effort to be a cowboy.
That was one of the posters advertising the movie?
No, it was a piece of sheet music with the title theme.
Oh.
The title theme, The Cowboy from Brooklyn, which I've never heard before, and I still haven't heard it.
Have you seen the movie?
No, I've not seen the movie.
I haven't either.
It wasn't one of Ronnie's best, apparently, but she just thought it was neat that it was a cowboy from Brooklyn. Of course, I was a Texan. I had to become a Texan. So, okay. Put this over here. I will video and you can stop.
Mike, would you make a few stills?
There you go.
I think that's all I need.
Okay.
Okay, yeah. Works just like a normal camera.
But
Huh?
it is a normal camera.
Yeah.
What was that?
It works just like a regular camera.
Yeah,
Oh, it's on automatic, all right.
it is, yeah. This is the shutter.
Right,
If you want to zoom, this is
right.
Okay, we're rolling here, as they say.
Yeah, just leave it. Oh, I didn't time that. I might ought to reset that. It may run out if I don't.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, we'll reset.
Okay, Conrad mentioned that he had seen this book of Bukowski poetry in my bag, and that motivated him to read some of Jory Sherman's poetry, which he mentioned Jory was a buddy of Bukowski's back in the 60s. I was not, I didn't know that, for one thing, and certainly didn't know that you were going to read something by Jory, who was a poet buddy, and maybe just a plain old buddy of Bukowski's. But I was going to say that I bought this book recently, not for myself, for my son, who is a Bukowski fan. And I know this because I've seen Bukowski books in his home, and I've heard him mention him from time to time, this sort of thing. So, in other words, he doesn't just say like Bukowski. Apparently he has some strong attraction, and I don't know what that is. I've never asked him. I think I'm going to try to find out maybe. My son is Colin Boyd. I have two sons. Colin is the oldest, and he's the one who is a Bukowski fan and has been for a number of years. And I saw this recently in a catalog once I was ordering some books for myself that were on sale, and they were not easy to find books. And then this was just kind of stuck out, and I thought, well, I'm going to get this as a gift for Colin, So, Colin, if you're watching this video, and I'm reading this out of a book that was soon. Next time I see you, this will be your book. I'll hand it to you. And another thing is I wanted to find out, well, I'd never read any of Bukowski's poetry, so I thought this would give me a chance to kind of maybe try to figure out what it is that appeals to Colin about it. And I've marked 3 of them with Post-it notes here. And I thought I'd try to read 3 Bukowski poems, dedicate them to Colin Boyd, my eldest son, and maybe try to myself get a little more feeling for the Bukowski as some sort of a muse. This first one is titled "The Life of." I'm going to pronounce it Borodin, B-O-R-O-D-I-N. He was a Russian composer in the 1800s. Maybe some of you
Yeah, I'm
are familiar with that.
He wrote The Night on Bald Mountain. I think, didn't he? No, that was Mussorgsky.
I wasn't familiar with.
He wrote an opera. He wrote an opera called Prince Igor.
I did Google him, and I found out, he'd written quite a bit of stuff. He was also a chemist and some other occupation. He was not just a composer. He was a chemist and something else. I forgot what now. But apparently quite a talented guy. And apparently, I guess he's somebody that, I'm judging that from this poem, that maybe it was somebody that Bukowski himself had listened to some of his music, and was prompted for some reason to write this poem called The Life of Borodin. The next time you listen to Borodin, remember he was just a chemist who wrote music to relax. His house was jammed with people, students, artists, drunkards, bums, and he never knew how to say no. The next time you listen to Borodin, remember his wife used his compositions to line the cat boxes with, or to cover jars of sour milk. She had asthma and insomnia and fed him soft-boiled eggs. And when he wanted to cover his head, to hide out the sounds of the house, she only allowed him to use the sheet. Besides, there was usually somebody in his bed. They slept separately when they slept at all. And since all the chairs were usually taken, he often slept on the stairway, wrapped in an old shawl. She told him when to cut his nails, not to sing or to whistle, or to put too much lemon in his tea, or press it with a spoon. Symphony No. 2 in B minor, Prince Igor, in the steppes of Central Asia. He could sleep only by putting a piece of dark cloth over his eyes. In 1887, he attended a dance at the Medical Academy, dressed in a merrymaking national costume. At last, he seemed exceptionally gay. And when he fell to the floor, they thought he was clowning. The next time you listen to Borodin, remember ... The end. Now the second one is the day I kicked a bankroll out the window. And I said, you can take your rich aunts and uncles and grandfathers and fathers and all their lousy oil and their 7 lakes and their wild turkey and buffalo and the whole state of Texas, meaning your crowblasts and your Saturday night boardwalks and your 2-bit library and your crooked councilmen and your pansy artists. You can take all of these and your weekly newspaper and your famous tornadoes and your filthy floods and all your yowling cats and your subscriptions to Life, and show them, baby, shove them, baby. I can handle a pick, an axe again, I think, and I can pick up $25 for a 4-rounder. Maybe, sure, I'm 38, but a little dye can pinch the gray out of my hair, and I can still write a poem sometimes. Don't forget that. And even if they don't pay off, it's better than waiting for death and oil and shooting wild turkey and waiting for the world to begin. All right, bum, she said, get out. What? I said, get out. You've thrown your last tantrum. I'm tired of your damn tantrums. You're always acting like a character in an O'Neill play. But I'm different, baby. I can't help it. You're different, all right. God, how different. Don't slam the door when you leave. But, baby, I love your money. You never once said you loved me. What do you want, a liar or a lover? You're neither. Out, bum, out. But baby, go back to O'Neill. I went to the door, softly closed it, walked away, thinking all they want is a wooden Indian to say yes or no, stand over the fire and not raise too much hell. But you're getting to be an old man, kiddo. Next time, play it closer to the vest. And finally, I think a very appropriate poem, Bukowski or otherwise, to end at one of our meetings. It's called To the Whore Who Took My Poems. Some say we should keep personal remorse from the poem, stay abstract, and there is some reason in this. But Jesus, 12 poems gone, and I don't keep carbons, and you have my paintings too, my best ones. It's stifling. Are you trying to crush me out like the rest of them? Why didn't you take my money? They usually do, from the sleeping drunken pants sick in the corner. Next time, take my left arm, or a 50, but not my poems. I'm not Shakespeare, but sometimes simply there won't be any more, abstract or otherwise. There'll always be money and whores and drunkards down to the last bomb. But as God said, crossing his legs, I see where I have made plenty of poets, but not so very much poetry. I think that's hilarious. Colin, this will be your book soon. Next time I see you, I promise. To end on our traditional note with a paragraph from How to Read a Poem, subtitled And Fall in Love with Poetry by Edward Hirsch, we now take up the paragraph for today, for this month. The great modernist writers like Joyce or Eliot often present us with an idea of the artist presiding over his creation like an objective, all-powerful God. But Neruda presents himself as writing from inside the experience of his own creation, trying to figure out what he is writing about, taking us through the logic of his thinking. I'm not sure. I understand only a little. I can hardly see. But it seems to me that its singing has the color of damp violets, of violets that are at home in the earth. I'm afraid that concludes our paragraph for this month, to be continued next month. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Conrad.
You're very welcome. Thank you, Joe Dan. There you go.